If you're someone who hates meal planning and just likes to go with the flow when it comes to cooking, then this video is for you. I've been resisting meal planning for years, and even when I've tried my best in the past to stick to a plan, I often found myself feeling too restricted and changed my plans. But I've recently found myself always cooking the same things, which has led me to a major food rut. So this week I came up with a few recipes I haven't made in a while and some new ones to try for the first time, and found myself finally sticking to a meal plan and getting excited to cook and eat again. On Monday I'm making one of my favorite Greek dishes called Youvetsi. This is basically an orzo-baked dish with beef, although you can also make it vegetarian by simply using Mediterranean vegetables instead of the meat. To make it, I started by boiling my beef first, so I just added it to a pan, covered it with boiling water and let it simmer for about 20 minutes. I also made sure I removed the froth that it creates while boiling until the water is clear. And while the beef is boiling, I'm cutting up an onion in big chunks and then using my trusted little food chopper to chop it finely. And if you don't have a food chopper, you can simply chop up the onion as finely as you can. Once the beef had time to cook, I put it on the side and to a separate pan added some olive oil. I then added the onions, seasoned with salt and pepper, and let them saute for a few minutes. I removed the beef from the stock and placed it in a separate dish, and then added it to the pan with the onions so you can get a nice color all around. I then added my passata and also some spoonfuls of the water that the beef has been boiling in, as I use that as my stock. And for spices, I'm using a cinnamon stick and a couple of bay leaves. I also added a can of chopped tomatoes, a bit of sugar and about a tablespoon of tomato paste. I then let it simmer for about 20 minutes. And when I was ready to bake it, I added some olive oil to my baking pan and then my orzo pasta. I gave it a quick stir so the orzo is coated in the oil and doesn't get stuck together, and also seasoned with salt and pepper. I then added the beef stew on top and gave it a good mix. I placed it in a preheated oven for 20 minutes and then took it out to add a bit more stock as the orzo had absorbed it all, and put it back in the oven until the pasta is cooked through. And you might need to check it while it's baking and see if it needs more water, and I mixed through again. Once it was ready, I served some rocket to my bowl, added some olive oil and vinegar and seasoned with salt. I then served a big portion of the Youvetsi and topped with lots of parmesan. And my first meal of the week is ready.
I actually haven't made Youvetsi in so long, so I'm so excited. I love this meal. It's probably one of my favorite Greek meals. It's so good. I love orzo pasta. When you bake it like this, it just goes all like, we call it echimelosi, almost like honeyed, and it's just so good. It's so yummy. Perfect. And with the parmesan on top, it's just so good. And if you can find kefalotiri or a bit of what's called that other Greek cheese, very salty one. Can't remember it, but I will put it on the screen. If you can find that, that would be even better. But I have some parmesan and it's just hitting the spot. I'm gonna go enjoy and I'll see you tomorrow.
Tuesday today, and we're experimenting with a new dish, garlic and parmesan creamy chicken with mash, and spoiler alert, this turned out so good, I'm definitely going to be making it again. To begin, I started by making the mashed potatoes, so I peeled a few potatoes, chopped them in similar sizes and added them to a pan with boiling water and let them boil until they were cooked through. And while the potatoes are boiling, I grabbed a separate pan and added some olive oil in it. I then chopped 2 packs of chicken thighs in small pieces straight into the pan and let them saute until they were fully cooked. I seasoned with salt and pepper and just gave them a mix from time to time so they can brown evenly. Once they were fully cooked, I transferred them to a plate and added a bit of butter to my pan. Once it had melted, I added my garlic and let it cook until it was fragrant. And then I added a few tablespoons of flour and whisked it well. I added my milk and continued whisking. And since I had a bit of ricotta in my fridge, I added a couple tablespoons and a teaspoon of whole grain mustard. I whisked everything well and then added my chicken back in the creamy sauce and gave everything a good mix. Lastly, I added some parmesan and gave everything a final mix. And now my potatoes were fully cooked, so I drained them and added them back to my pan. I added a bit of butter and some milk. I seasoned with salt and pepper and mashed them with my potato masher until they became creamy. And now on to serving. As always, I'm starting with my rocket salad as I love to have something green with every meal, and rocket is my favorite green. Then add in my mashed potatoes and my creamy chicken, and I know this doesn't look as good as it's more of a beige feast minus the rocket, but it smelled amazing. And as for the taste, it was so yummy. I definitely will be making it again.
Day 2 of my meal plan with some garlic parmesan chicken, so let's try it. This is so yummy. And the mashed potato is so good. I didn't expect it to be this good, you know. So simple to make, and I definitely recommend doing chicken thigh because it's just so much more juicy and succulent and just more flavorful than chicken breast. But you can also make it with chicken breast.
On Wednesday, I'm making fish and chips as I prefer the homemade version to the takeaway one as it's so much lighter and tastes so much fresher. To make it, I started by making the chips, so I just chopped a few potatoes in chip sizes and added it to a pan lined with baking paper to cook for about 30 to 40 minutes. And usually I keep my chips pretty basic with just olive oil and salt and pepper, but you can also add whatever spices you like. And while my potatoes are baking, I'm prepping my fish, so I added some panko breadcrumbs to one bowl, and for spices, I'm using herbs de Provence, garlic and paprika, which is my favorite combination at the minute. So I added about 2 teaspoons of each and gave them a good mix. And to the other bowl, I just cracked an egg and whisked it well. Also forgot to add salt and pepper to my breadcrumbs, so I just seasoned with that. And then for my fish, I'm using some cod, so I placed them in a separate plate and patted them dry with some kitchen towel. And now to assemble, I started by dipping the fish to the egg mixture and then added it to the breadcrumbs and covered it evenly. I then placed it in a separate plate and continue with the same process for the rest of my fish fillets. And to cook them, I simply placed them in my air fryer and cooked them until the fish was thoroughly cooked. For the side, I'm also boiling some peas, as you can't have fish and chips without some peas on the side, right? Sometimes I feel like I've gone so English with my food choices. Anyways, I'm also making a quick tartare sauce for the side, so to a little bowl I added equal parts of yogurt and mayonnaise. And since I didn't have any fresh dill, I added about a teaspoon of dried dill and squeezed half a lemon. I gave it a quick mix and then added some capers that I roughly chopped. And now everything is ready, so I added loads of chips to my plate, some peas, a fillet of fish and topped it with my tartare sauce. And this was so yummy. I love making homemade versions of takeaway dishes. You still get the taste but then still feel good after you've eaten them. Let me know what's your favorite takeaway to recreate at home, by the way. Would love to know what your favorites are. It's Thursday and my in-laws were visiting, so I thought lasagna would be a crowd pleaser, and it's great as leftovers the next day, so I started by making my bolognese, but with a Greek twist of course. So for my veggies, I'm cutting up an onion and a carrot in big pieces and then adding them to my food chopper so they can be finely chopped. I added some olive oil to my pan and then added my veggies to saute for a few minutes. I seasoned with salt and pepper and then also added my minced beef. I gave it a good mix and continued stirring so all the meat can get browned evenly. I then added my chopped tomatoes, passata, dried basil, a cinnamon stick and 2 bay leaves. For depth of flavor, I'm also adding some tomato paste and about a tablespoon of balsamic vinegar. I gave it a good mix and then let it simmer for a couple of hours. And I had actually prepared the bolognese the day before, so on Thursday I only had to make the bechamel, which couldn't be simpler. I simply added equal parts of olive oil and flour to my pan and giving it a good whisk. I then added my milk and continued whisking until it thickens up. And I will have all these recipes written in the description below, so you can find all the exact measurements there. So to put the lasagna together, I started by doing a layer of the minced sauce. I added some bechamel on top and then an even layer of the lasagna sheets. I then continue with more mint sauce, bechamel and lasagna, and then for the last layer I did only bechamel for the top, so I added all my bechamel and spread it out evenly. I topped with some mozzarella cheese and some parmesan and covered the lasagna with some foil to bake for the first 20 minutes and then uncovered it and baked it for a further 20 minutes. I then let it rest in the oven for about 10 minutes, as if you try to cut it too early it will collapse, but trust me, I've done this before as I'm always impatient and it still tastes the same, but you just don't get this layer showing as much. Anyways, I served a big piece on my plate with some rocket on the side and this was so delicious. Everyone loved it and said it was one of the best lasagna they've ever eaten it, so I was very happy with the result. And Friday night we're making another homemade version of a popular takeaway with homemade burgers and chicken nuggets plus a yummy Caesar salad for the side. To begin, I started by making the chicken nuggets, so I followed the same process I did for the fish and chips with 1 bowl of panko breadcrumbs which I seasoned with paprika, garlic and herbes de Provence, and the other bowl of a whisked up egg. And I had 2 chicken breast fillets, so I simply cut them up in small pieces to make my nuggets. I then dip them in the egg and then on the panko breadcrumbs, making sure they're fully covered in the breadcrumbs before transferring them to my plate. I then put them in my air fryer to bake, and I did about 20 minutes, although I think they probably needed a bit less time. I'm still getting used to how quick and powerful my air fryer is, so I think next time I'd cook them for 10 minutes, but just check if the meat is cooked through. For my Caesar salad, I'm making a quick Caesar dressing, as I never have ready-made dressings in the house, so I always end up making my own versions, which to be honest taste even better and fresher. So to make it, I added equal parts of mayonnaise and Greek yogurt, some dried garlic, parmesan, black pepper and red wine vinegar and some whole grain mustard, so I just added those in and gave the dressing a good mix. And for my burgers, I'm going with a lazy version and just putting these ready-made burgers in my grill to cook. And now my chicken nuggets were ready, so I transferred them all to a plate, and of course I had to try one, and this was so delicious. I love that combination of spices, but you can tell it's a bit drier than I'd like. Anyways, now to assemble my salad, I added some lettuce to my bowl, plus some rocket, baby tomatoes and some avocado. I seasoned with some salt and then added my dressing and gave everything a good mix. I added some chicken nuggets on top and my salad was ready. I served some on my plate, and then for my burger I'm using a bagel, as I love the taste of them compared to a regular bun. For sauces I used mayonnaise and mustard, although I would have added some ketchup too, but sadly I was out. I then topped with my burger and a slice of cheese and some tomato slices, and my burger was ready. This was so yummy and such a nice Friday night dinner option, and overall I loved this week, and it was so nice to have a plan and actually stick to it for once.